the magnitude of attack. The
Correct.
number of invasions, the complexity, and the damage done by each successful invasion, that actually overweighs on us. Let us say that Panipat battle was there. People think Panipat had basically destroyed us and that was the end of the story. But that was not true, right? I mean, after that, we had rebuilt. Marathas had defeated British also. And at that time, Marathas had to face the British, the French, the Portuguese, and the Mughals,
All
and
at
the
the
various
same time.
and the various sultanates,
all the Nizams.
the Oudh, Bengal, Mysore. So, I mean, just imagine one Marathas doing all this at the same time. And then we try to put something just to rationalize their defeat. We say they were not strategic enough for this or that. I mean, all kinds of fault finding. What they had done is a superhuman effort, which probably nobody else would have been able to do. And each of these empires, how big was the British Empire in 1750s? If you just look at the map, what is the resource base they had? We only count the number of British people inside India, which is not meaningful. They had sufficient resource base to generate the kind of sophisticated attack which they could at that time. Whereas we were defending our land against all these people. I mean, Portuguese had basically captured Goa, and it took a lot of effort to recapture Vasai itself. I mean, we lost a lot of army at that time. So the cost of each victory, cost of each defeat, this is not just a matter of tactic or strategy. Obviously, people there who were fighting, they had fairly high IQ. They were very smart people. But we just oversimplify the magnitude and complexity of the problem we had at that time. And the capture of the seas. How much resource base did we have to get the trade done and reap the results of our trade? We were a century earlier, we were actually doing a lot of trade. We were very rich. But then that had actually shrunk because of the global situation. I mean, a lot of attacks happened and people had actually captured a much bigger part of that share of that trade. So Marathas practically had to survive on the Chowth or the taxation. Chowth is also not, that was a crisis measure tax, right? I mean, ideally what Chanakya prescribes is not 25% tax.
10% only.
Yeah.
1/10.
So this was a crisis tax, which we need to understand, which had to be done at that situation. And society got feudalized at that time. I mean, a lot of people, while all this military success is attributed to the Peshwas, at the same time, during the same Peshwas, society got very feudalized because these people started incentivizing the zamindars, all these people, the middlemen, to extract more tax. Whoever was doing that. So a lot of dynamics are involved there. All this could have been undone if we had sufficient time and self-governance. But there was nothing to undo, right? Immediately British came and they have deepened that feudalism instead of removing that, because that was incentivizing for their loot. So whatever India is feudal, all these things date directly to that situation, that crisis that was created by the same British.
Okay.
So again, coming back, is it all lack of intelligence? Obviously, it is not lack of intelligence. It was just that the problem is too big for you and you had done whatever was possible for you within your limited capacity.
So one thing I keep hearing is, of course, all the treachery and all of that, even with the Vijayanagar Empire, for example, when it was winning, of course, there were some Muslim, cavalry, I believe, which are turned against because they wanted to side on the side of Islam versus the royalties there. And also, but there were some brothers or some distant relatives which turned away. So minus that, one is the treachery which gets blamed a lot, from Jaichand to right down to, say, Vijayanagar, or even Sambhaji Maharaj's arrest, his capture, his leading to his capture. But that apart, there is another. So 2 points, right? One, like Abhijit Iyer was saying, that birth-based Varna Do you have a point there? And the second part is about Hindu confederations. Other than one confederation, I believe, of the Bundelis and the Rajputs, I'm not too sure. I think 3 or 4 kingdoms or Janapadas, kingdoms, I would guess, got together and invaded Kabul, which was actually way beyond their territorial whatever to win it back. This is after, if I'm not wrong, in the 800s.
Correct.
So I mean, these 2 points. I mean, there weren't enough Hindu confederations, enough of them getting together and saying this is part of our land and we are going to go and invade. So do you have a point on that? I tried to bring it
Yeah,
up.
so that again is like comparing with respect to what we understand today. Confederations have happened because people had that commitment. There was no political union. So whatever was done, they did because they saw the need. So today, how much are the states cooperating on any pandemic or any crisis, or even forget pandemic, even water? They are fighting with each other. You have a political union, still states are bickering. States are bickering on language, on water, on everything. That was a time when people cooperated without having a political union. So first draw this contrast. We need to get our perspective on what we should expect from what times.
And is this also unrealistic? Because it's not that the invaders who were coming in were all confederations.
Exactly.
They were also
That's what our
marauders who
expectation.
basically were winning over each other and gathering more force and coming in badgering.
Yes. So that expectation is itself meaningless. But at the same time, in spite of that, people had actually created confederations, much more in number than we read in the textbooks, obviously. There was one confederation that Yashodharma had built. There was one that Bhoja had built. There was one again, I don't recall it, who it was, but a confederation was silently formed. The enemy was allowed to come as far as Puri, and then the whole army was massacred.
Oh, wow.
And then Marathas actually unified a lot. I mean,
Yes.
for all the credit we deny them.
Yes.
In spite of not having a political union.
Yeah, it was a revelation for me when I read The Land of Seven Rivers. I mean, honestly, that book was the transformation for my personal journey of the, I don't know, the association with this land, if you like. When I saw the Maratha map or the territories that Marathas ruled, even as confederations within them,
Exactly.
feudal confederations, was larger than the political entity that is India at this point in time. It was shocking. Attak to Kattak.
Exactly. Yeah. Except Afghan region, probably they ruled most of India, barring 3 sultanates: the Oudh, the Bengal, and the Mysore. And
Right.
these 3 were the rogue players that eventually caused our fall to British.
Oh, I don't know this story.
I mean, we don't see it that way. We attribute that whole victory and loss to Marathas. They lost, they won. But the foul play that happened by these 3 needs to be correlated with what actually happened at that time. Marathas were fighting the Mysore. At the same time, they were fighting the British. Why did they have to fight Mysore? Because Tipu was actually massacring and converting Hindus. They had to stop that. So the Peshwas had to invest a lot of army to basically bend Tipu down to at least come to a pact where he will say, I will stop massacring. And that happened at the peak of the time when Marathas were defending their life against the British. So, but who has actually taken this native perspective and seen this from this side? That's the main problem. We try to get too neutral about this matter and say that they have lacked this perspective, all that.